Melissa stood at the altar in her $5,000 wedding dress, waiting for David to arrive. 300 guests sat in awkward silence as minutes turned to hours. But what she discovered that day wasn't just that her fiancé had disappeared, it was that her entire relationship had been a lie orchestrated by someone she trusted most. The truth will make you question every relationship in your life. You think you know where this story is going, but trust me, you don't. Because what happened to Melissa is every person's worst nightmare, wrapped in a plot so twisted that even Hollywood wouldn't believe it. Stay until the end, because the person behind this betrayal will shock you. Melissa and David had been together for 3 years. They met at a coffee shop where she was a struggling nursing student and he was supposedly a successful marketing executive. He was charming, attentive, everything she'd dreamed of. He'd send flowers to her work, surprise her with weekend getaways, and talk about their future with such conviction that Melissa felt like the luckiest girl alive. "You're going to be such a beautiful bride," David would whisper, holding her close. "I can't wait to call you my wife." He proposed on their second anniversary with a ring that took Melissa's breath away. The wedding planning was a fairy tale. David insisted on paying for everything, saying his marketing firm was doing incredibly well. But here's what Melissa didn't know: David wasn't successful. He wasn't even David Martinez, the name on his business cards. His real name was Danny Morrison, and he was $80,000 in debt with a gambling addiction that had destroyed his previous life. The ring? Fake. The fancy dinners? Paid for with credit cards he'd maxed out. The wedding? Funded by loans he'd taken out in Melissa's name without her knowledge. As the wedding day approached, Melissa started noticing strange things. David would disappear for hours, claiming work emergencies. He'd get nervous whenever she mentioned meeting his family, always having excuses for why they couldn't make it to events. His phone was constantly buzzing with calls he'd never answer in front of her. "It's just work stress," he'd say, kissing her forehead. "After the wedding, everything will be perfect." Melissa believed him because she loved him, because she'd planned her entire future around him, because the alternative was unthinkable. The night before the wedding, David seemed especially anxious. He barely ate at the rehearsal dinner, kept checking his phone, and left early claiming he needed rest. "Tomorrow, you'll be Mrs. Martinez," he said, holding her hands. "I love you more than anything in this world." Those were the last words he ever said to her. Wedding day arrived with perfect weather. Melissa felt like a princess as her bridesmaids helped her into her dress. Her maid of honor, Rachel, her best friend since childhood, seemed unusually quiet, but Melissa attributed it to pre-wedding nerves. The ceremony was set for 2 p.m. By 2:30, the whispers started. By 3 o'clock, panic set in. By 4 o'clock, Melissa was sitting in the bridal suite, still in her wedding dress, trying to call a man who had vanished without a trace. That's when Rachel finally spoke up. "Melissa, there's something I need to tell you." The tone in her voice made Melissa's blood run cold. Rachel sat down, tears streaming down her face, and said the words that would shatter everything: "David isn't who you think he is. And this whole thing, it was my idea." The room went silent except for the sound of Melissa's heart breaking. Rachel continued through her tears, "His real name is Danny Morrison. He's my cousin. He owed money to some very dangerous people, and I thought if he could marry someone with good credit, someone trusting, he could take out loans and disappear. I never meant for it to go this far. I never meant for you to actually fall in love with him." Melissa stared at her best friend, the woman who'd been her maid of honor at the wedding that would never happen, who'd helped her pick out the dress she was still wearing, who'd listened to her gush about David for 3 years. "You set this up," Melissa whispered. "I was desperate," Rachel sobbed. "He said they were going to hurt him if he didn't pay. I just wanted to help him get a fresh start. But then you two seemed so happy, and I kept thinking maybe it could work, maybe he'd really changed. I tried to call it off last week, but he said it was too late, that he'd already taken out the loans." "The loans?" Melissa's stomach dropped. "What loans?" Rachel's face went white. "He used your information to get credit cards, a car loan, even a mortgage pre-approval. Melissa, you're on the hook for over $200,000 in debt." As the full scope of the betrayal sank in, Melissa realized she'd lost everything: her fiancé, her best friend, her financial future, and her ability to trust her own judgment. The wedding that was supposed to be the happiest day of her life had become the day she discovered that the two people she trusted most in the world had conspired to destroy her. But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. As Melissa sat there in her wedding dress, surrounded by wilted flowers and broken dreams, something inside her hardened. The gentle, trusting nursing student who'd fallen for David's lies was gone. In her place was someone who'd learned the most valuable lesson of all: when people show you who they really are, believe them the first time. Melissa didn't cry. She didn't break down. Instead, she called her lawyer, reported the fraud, and pressed charges against both David and Rachel. She sold everything David had given her, moved back in with her parents, and spent the next 2 years rebuilding her credit and her life. She finished nursing school at the top of her class, landed her dream job, and slowly learned to trust again. 3 years later, Melissa was working as a head nurse when 2 patients were brought into the emergency room after a car accident. One was Rachel, who'd been driving drunk. The other was David, or Danny, who'd been her passenger. They'd been living together since the wedding scam, using the money they'd stolen to fund a lifestyle of gambling and drinking. As Melissa looked down at the 2 people who'd destroyed her life, both now broken and dependent on her care, she felt something she didn't expect: pity. Rachel had lost her job, her apartment, and her family's respect. David had never paid back the people he owed, and word around town was they'd finally caught up with him. The car accident was just the latest in a series of disasters that had befallen them since the wedding day. Melissa could have refused to treat them. She could have let someone else handle their care. Instead, she did what she'd trained to do: she saved their lives. Not because they deserved it, but because she'd become someone who chose healing over hatred. Who understood that the best revenge is a life well lived. Today, Melissa is married to Marcus, a fellow nurse who proved his love through consistency, not grand gestures. They have 2 beautiful children and a relationship built on trust that was earned, not assumed. She never heard from David or Rachel again after that night in the emergency room, and that's exactly how she prefers it. Melissa's story taught me this: sometimes the people closest to us are capable of the deepest betrayals, but that doesn't mean we should stop trusting. It means we should trust more wisely. The red flags were there, but love made her blind to them. Now she knows that real love doesn't ask you to ignore your instincts or excuse away concerning behavior. What would you have done in Melissa's situation? Could you have forgiven Rachel's betrayal? Let me know in the comments. And remember, if someone truly loves you, they'll never put you in a position where their problems become your problems without your knowledge. If this story affected you, hit that like button, subscribe for more true stories, and remember, trust is earned through actions, not words.